Story 1. I equate it to sports. People align themselves with a team and make it their identity. After 10 to 15 years, the team may be entirely different, but the loyalty never wavers. Story 2. Based on my observations, Republicans are very satisfied with the direction President Trump is taking the country. I do not believe they are in denial. They are genuinely pleased with what they see. They voted for this and are happy with it, so why would they consider it a mistake? Story 3. To paraphrase a transphobe, it is easier to forgive someone for being wrong than it is to forgive them for being right. Story 4. Nobody likes to admit they were wrong. It doesn't help that people are often unwilling to forgive, so they double down instead of seeking understanding. We should all strive to be more forgiving toward those who have changed their views. The disinformation in the modern political landscape can be difficult to navigate, even for the best of us. Story 5. Some of them are getting exactly what they wanted. Others feel the alternative was worse or simply do not care about issues that do not impact them or their community. Story 6. These individuals have made Donald Trump their entire personality, and the cultural conflict he is waging is their whole identity. Admitting a mistake is profoundly challenging for them, as this reflects their alignment. I do not expect many of the hardliners to acknowledge that they were deceived. Story 7. Because politics have replaced religion and identity for some reason. Admitting you misunderstood what was going on is essentially saying your God isn't real. Story 8. There is a significant lack of education regarding both the socio-emotional skill of admitting when one is wrong and political education. This skill requires practice, and I believe people are often more insecure about it than humble. I was never required to take a political science or government class in my public education, but it would have helped me develop a critical perspective to understand our government, which I fear many individuals lack. Story 9. Well, one reason is that others criticize them for their vote. Most people won't be honest or will lie because we are all judgmental. If I voted for a candidate and they turn out to be terrible, saying, "Yeah, I voted for them," often leads to criticism from others, as if I am responsible for their actions. To avoid this, some choose to lie or defend the politician to appear supportive of their decisions. Story 10. I believe part of the reason is how you framed that question. People often have an aversion to phrases like "admit" and "you made a mistake," because those imply that the person did something wrong by voting differently from you. Individuals have various reasons for voting the way they do, and it's crucial to communicate with them without condescension if you want them to respond honestly. Try asking them what they think of a specific action a politician is taking. It's much more neutral and could help you understand their motivations. Story 11. It is not a left or right issue. The entirety of American culture has devolved into self-validation, with individuals rarely holding themselves accountable for anything. Everything is focused on doing what is best for oneself or on attributing problems to others. Story 12. They associated voting for Trump with core personality traits or sense of self. Therefore, doubting him feels personal and emotional. Similar to Tea Party imagery and conspiracy theories, the narrative of "Stop the Steal" was presented as revolutionary talk, making supporters feel like American heroes or historical figures, rather than insecure individuals with no legacy. Questioning this belief shatters the illusion that they were part of something heroic. Additionally, religious converts or fanatics often exhibit strong devotion. Their blind faith in God is linked to a politician. Story 13. Because they are criticized for not having seen through him earlier. It is hard to admit that you are wrong when there is no social benefit to doing so. It might help to create an environment that applauds individuals for taking steps in the right direction, as frustrating as it is for those of us on the outside that it took people this long to realize. Story 14. If I am being charitable to people, it is that counterfactuals are hard. I voted for Biden. Biden definitely made mistakes, and I would have also made mistakes running the country. I remain convinced that the Biden administration outperformed a hypothetical Trump 2020 administration despite those mistakes. How in the world would I ever be proven wrong? If I did make a mistake in my vote, how would I be able to figure out that Trump would have done better? This is before you bring bias into it. So it is easy for me to say, yes, there is inflation under Biden, but Trump would have had higher inflation. Or I could complicate it further by saying, Trump might have been more aggressive on inflation, but unemployment would have been higher as a trade-off, and I prefer high inflation to high unemployment. Absent really large collapses, people are generally unwilling to revise their estimates, in part because it is so hard to prove. If unemployment hits multi-decade highs and inflation stays well above 2%, my bet is that many people who voted for Trump will vote for Democrats in 2026. If it does not, I think they probably will not. Story 15. People who vote for someone unable to take accountability also lack accountability. Story 16. These posts are so inauthentic. They are spammed on the subreddit daily and appear at the top with very few comments. They are desperately trying to get Trump supporters to express regrets with no success. It's quite humorous. Story 17. Because we elected him to eliminate excessive political correctness and government waste. He is doing exactly what he promised. What is there to view as a mistake? Story 18. Are we discussing voters who support Biden? If so, I believe it is because they lack self-acceptance and desire for others to experience hardship. Story 19. It's been 5 weeks and you're already having the, "Oh my God. Why is it so hard for you to admit you were wrong?" struggle session. Story 20. People often struggle to admit when they are wrong. Generally, the less educated individuals are, the more stubborn they tend to be about this. It appears that those who support extreme candidates often overlap with those who lack both academic and emotional education. Story 21. Firstly, no one likes to admit that they are wrong. People dislike admitting they wasted resources on something. They also hate the consequences of their actions being harmful to themselves and others. So we have a clear situation here. Story 22. Most admitted Nixon was a mistake. My stepfather, who was a lifelong Republican, deviated and voted for Carter. Yes, he voted for Trump 2 times before he passed in 2023. I asked him why he did this regarding Nixon but not Trump, but he would not answer me. He passed a few months later. Story 23. Now, why would a 5-year-old account with a total of 6 karma points suddenly appear to ask such a question? Story 24. Both sides are petty, and nobody likes to be reprimanded. If someone admits they were wrong, they will not hear the end of it. Story 25. People struggle to admit voting mistakes because these choices become intertwined with their identity and self-image. Admitting you backed the wrong person means confronting your own judgment errors. In the context of tribal politics, switching sides feels like betrayal, and the natural psychological defense of cognitive dissonance makes it easier to double down than to admit fault. Nobody wants to give ammunition to political opponents who will say, "I told you so." We have created a political culture where changing your mind is seen as weakness rather than wisdom. Story 26. Because they treat it as an extension of themselves like a sports team. Additionally, people generally do not like admitting they are wrong. Story 27. In my experience, a central principle of conservatism today is to never admit you were wrong, regardless of the situation. They may view it as a sign of weakness. Story 28. Saving face and avoiding embarrassment can lead to being indoctrinated into a group over the years by propaganda from certain news outlets, their community, and a lack of critical thinking and reasoning skills due to inadequate education. The desire to oppose opposing views can manifest as bullying behavior. Story 29. I think there is a particular type of person who can never admit any mistake. They either view it as a weakness or they are not capable of reflection. For lack of a better term, I call these individuals Republicans. Story 30. People love to incorporate things they like into their identity, including concepts, ideas, or objects. It makes sense that individuals would feel more emotionally attached to public figures they identify with, as these figures are real, living individuals. The same principle applies to people in long-term relationships. A partner can become a part of your identity, and even if they become abusive, the emotional attachment and sense of identity can be so strong that you may begin to make excuses for their behavior. I believe this is also why people make excuses for problematic celebrities and politicians. Story 31. Tribalism is a strong force in humanity. Once a side is chosen, people rarely change their views. Additionally, Individuals do not want to feel foolish themselves or appear foolish to others. Consequently, people tend to double down. Story 32. Confirmation bias is a powerful influence. They will present information in various ways, and suddenly, it aligns with our long-held beliefs, and we perceive it as positive. Story 33. People do not like to be wrong. They would rather be wrong 50 times in a row than admit they were wrong once and be right the other 49 times. Story 34. There is no such thing as an accepted theory. When people make a decision, admitting that it was a bad one is to them the same as saying that they are bad people. Story 35. Megas have committed their ego and personality to idol worship. It's very hard to let go, even in the face of obvious insanity. Story 36. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we have been deceived long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the deception. We are no longer interested in finding out the truth. The deception has captured us. It is simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we have been taken. Once you give a fraud power over you, you almost never get it back. Story 37. Cultural affiliation with political parties has become diametrically opposed. A 51-49 split is not created by chance. It is established by a system. Story 38. Many of the people who support Trump have centered their identities around loyalty to him and his actions. That is the most difficult kind of mistake to admit. Most would rather do anything else. Cognitive dissonance is incredibly powerful when someone does not want to believe the truth. Story 39. It is human nature not to want to feel like the wrongdoer in any situation. We have all made mistakes and created excuses for them, even if those excuses were only meant to convince ourselves that we were right. In politics, when you introduce philosophy, religion, and personal issues into this scenario, you find people who are too proud and too afraid to admit they were wrong. It is interesting to remind certain individuals that they know something is wrong and that they are only making excuses to convince themselves. They are, for the most part, deeply aware of this. Story 40. Many people tie their sense of self-identity to their beliefs and opinions. Admitting that some of these may be wrong can feel like a condemnation of their character and self-identity. Story 41. Once a person identifies as either a Republican or a Democrat, it becomes part of their identity, leading to an emotional decision rather than a rational one. Story 42. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. They cannot admit that the candidate they supported made a mistake because that would mean acknowledging their own error, reinforcing what others have said about their poor judgment. They have invested too much into the group, and withdrawing now would be seen as a failure. Story 43. Most people have no understanding of what elected officials are doing and only accept what they hear from their preferred news channel. Story 44. After being encouraged to read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, I'm starting to think that it comes down to the way people discuss politics. The structure of these discussions is often accusatory, driven by hatred or frustration, and it is directed at voters more than at politicians. Even if voters are at fault, they are also the least likely to admit it. I have seen discussions where people argue that we must accept our disaffected opponents with open arms and allow them to save face when they are wrong. If you seek to prove them wrong and berate them for it, you will only push them further away. Although this dynamic occurs on both sides, the more entrenched and extreme the position of people on the right, the more the left tends to reject accepting them back. While it is understandable to not want to give others an escape from their poor decisions, many will make choices based on pride. If you let your pride prevent you from opening your heart or mind, you will struggle to make progress. I also believe that the broad messaging of the Democratic Party and the left in general creates a mashup of individuals ranging from borderline communists to moderates with aggressive tendencies, along with people in between who are mainly focused on advancing their community's needs. This makes it easy to attack the left as a whole based on minor issues that are not central to the party's platform. As a result, people may feel convinced that they are aligning themselves with something malicious simply because someone in that party holds a belief they disagree with, even if the party itself does not prioritize it. The right-wing party often manages to explain away inconsistencies in its focus, so they tend not to experience as many issues when things don't align. Story 45. I was listening to my parents on the phone. My dad is in Korea, where they arrested the president for something. My mom asked him if he still supports him, and my dad said that since he has done something wrong, he does not deserve to be president anymore. I respect him for that. Story 46. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we have been deceived long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the deception. We are no longer interested in finding out the truth. The deception has captured us. It is simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we have been misled. Once you give a fraud power over you, you almost never get it back. Story 47. When I was young, my aunt clogged our toilet on Christmas Eve so badly that we had to throw out my toothbrush. The point is, both sides are disappointing when it comes to politics. Story 48. I think people identify too personally with politics. They do not focus on specific policies. Instead, they develop a parasocial relationship with the candidate, making it a personal connection that becomes part of their identity. When this connection is criticized, it feels like a personal attack. Saying someone made a mistake in their voting choice can feel as hurtful as calling them unattractive or unintelligent. Story 49. Because on some level, who they vote for is an extension of themselves. This is a strange concept to me. I just vote for whoever I believe will make the most progress for our country and the well-being of its people. However, others want someone in power who mirrors their personality. Therefore, if you criticize anything that politician does, it feels like a personal attack. Story 50. Many people seem to make it their identity, so admitting that their associate is a criminal makes them feel like they are as well. Story 51. It has become a "you are with me" or "you are my enemy." Left versus right, blue versus red. If you confess to voting differently, you feel as if you are becoming or joining the enemy. We need to eliminate the two-party system. Multi-party democracies are far more stable. They may not be perfect, but they are much better, in my humble opinion. Story 52. Because they have convinced themselves that under no circumstances have they made a mistake, and that is that. They can be shown every piece of evidence to the contrary, and it will not matter. They are committed to their ideas. This is how cults operate as well. There can be absolutely no flexibility in thought. Story 53. People do not like to admit they are wrong. There are many reasons for this, but it ultimately comes down to a reluctance to accept alternative viewpoints. They will only listen to biased information that supports their beliefs and will disregard everything else, labeling it as false information. Story 54. Many people mistake "I'm choosing someone to do a job" for "I'm committing my life to this person's identity." Story 55. People are too stubborn. They refuse to acknowledge it. They ignore all the evidence you provide showing them their mistakes. Their response is to say gas is 2 cents cheaper, and they stick to that belief despite all the surrounding disasters. Story 56. It's really not that hard, and in most countries we have no issue saying things like, "I voted for X because I believed, but I can't believe I voted for this guy. I like him for X, but not for Y." People didn't have issues criticizing even a widely beloved figure like Angela Merkel. I don't particularly like the president I voted for and have no issue saying that while standing by my vote, given the circumstances, the opposition was just objectively worse. I won't like the one I'm voting for in May either, but we just have a bad pool. One candidate wants to imprison LGBTQ+ individuals, and the other does not want us to be treated equally, so it's frustrating. America is just chaotic. Story 57. Most people tie their identity and self-worth to external things, such as candidates, parties, teams, companies, and games. They often cannot admit that their chosen item is flawed because doing so would mean they were wrong in their choice, which would undermine their perceived self-worth. This is why individuals cling to misguided beliefs, such as, "My team is better," "This game, movie, or book is the best," or "The president is great." They perceive themselves as intelligent, and because they believe they are intelligent, they assume they can never make a wrong choice. Consequently, the items they select are also perceived as flawless. Any suggestion that their choice is less than great feels like an attack on their self-worth, implying they were not as smart as they thought. It creates a flawed reasoning loop. This is good because I chose it, and I am good because I choose well. Story 58. It is related to the ego. If your beliefs and decisions are tied to your ego or sense of self, then admitting you made a mistake in your belief or decision diminishes your sense of self. The ego will defend itself with irrational arguments to survive. The stronger a person's ego, the harder it is for them to admit a mistake. Essentially, it would be perceived as admitting weakness to others. Donald Trump is a good example of an extremely egocentric person. Story 59. Tribalism is the answer. Humans evolved to form tribes that prioritize the interests of their members over outsiders. Survival required absolute support from the group. Hostility towards outsiders was advantageous when competing for resources or defending against threats, fostering an us versus them mentality. Group loyalty to ensure survival is no longer a necessity. Instead, we align culturally and politically, but the underlying evolutionary predisposition remains. We need the group to survive. To summarize, admitting our candidate was a poor choice could be harmful to our group. Story 60. Either because they genuinely don't think the candidate they voted for was a mistake, or because apologizing in the current political climate can lead to severe backlash. Many individuals hesitate to express their doubts. Even if someone has reservations about their choice, they often won't admit it for fear of facing criticism from both sides. Story 61. You can hardly prevent half of this country's voters from claiming they made a mistake voting for someone, even if they didn't actually make one. The exact opposite is true for the other half. Story 62. I need to tell you that you are being influenced by the media to believe that people are having second thoughts about Donald Trump. Every person who voted for Trump fully supports everything he has done so far. I am personally thrilled with the changes he has initiated. The activist judges stand in the way, but once the Supreme Court addresses those obstacles, Trump will improve the lives of the citizens of the United States. America first. God bless Donald Trump. Story 63. Maybe if we start calling all the Make America Great Again supporters Russians, they will understand how far they have gone. Story 64. Pride, ego, stupidity, ignorance of reality, stubbornness, narcissism, and more. I am going to assume this is explicitly about Trump. Ask any supporters what they know about or think about January 6th. Most of them do not know the actual truth, and those I have spoken with personally are shocked to find out. A lot of them live in a bubble, but even when it is popped, it is jarring, and many people regress and simply say things like, well, I still like him. This is obstinacy. Story 65. Only those who are emotionally intelligent admit to mistakes, and emotionally intelligent people do not vote for Trump. Many individuals stated that voting for Biden was a mistake. Story 66. My neighbors took down their big flag and stickers the day after the election. It shows cowardice. They just had a baby, as if they think liberals are going to attack them. Again, it shows cowardice. Story 67, because it is a cult. The entire country is a cult of religion, capitalism, nationalism, and consumerism. Story 68, because people are a problem. We consume, replicate, destroy, and hold most other life in low esteem compared to our own immediate needs. The immense figure not only represents this, but also the individuals who elected him are too ignorant and too slow to connect facts and separate truth from falsehood. We are, by and large, not well equipped to survive much longer. Story 69. Both capitalist American political parties have become a bizarre combination of lifestyle brands and sports franchises. This is amusing because they actually agree on quite a lot, such as their support for Israel. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.